Close your eyes for a moment. Not yet finish this sentence first. But soon, because that's where this begins, in the closing of your eyes, in the pause before the next thought arrives, in that thin sliver of quiet you've likely been avoiding for a very long time. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, even if no one will ever hear your answer. When was the last time you did nothing at all? Not watched anything, not scrolled through anything, not planned anything, worried about anything, or filled a silence with anything. Just nothing. Still, quiet. With no particular place to be and no particular self to perform. If you're struggling to remember, you're in the right place. For this journey, my name is Professor Nothingness. And despite what that sounds like, I'm not here to teach you emptiness. I'm here to show you something hidden within it, something most people spend their entire lives sprinting past without ever stopping to look. What you'll find in the next 90 minutes isn't philosophy for its own sake. It isn't a lecture or a prescription. It's more like a long conversation between old friends, one of whom has been running and the other of whom has been sitting quietly, waiting. I've been waiting for you. Let's begin. Meeting the void. The thing you've been avoiding. There is a hollow space within most people. Not a wound, not a sickness, just a quiet room that sits behind the chest, behind the noise, behind the endless scheduling, achieving, and performing. You felt it. Everyone has. That faint hum beneath ordinary days, the one that says this isn't quite enough, even when everything on paper is exactly as it should be. You win the promotion, and the hum is there. You finish the project, and the hum is there. You take the vacation, buy the thing, reach the milestone, and the hum remains. Maybe quieter for a moment, but it returns, as reliable as the tide, whispering something you can't quite make out. Most people respond by turning up the volume everywhere else. More news, more plans, more goals, more noise. Anything to drown out the whisper before it becomes a voice they must answer. But here is what no one tells you. The whisper is not your enemy. That low hum of unease, that brush of emptiness, it is not a sign that anything is wrong with you. It is not a hole to be filled. It is an invitation, a door. And behind it is not darkness, but the most profound stillness you've ever stood within. We call it nothingness, and we are terrified of it. Think about what happens when life goes quiet. A conversation ends, and your hand reaches for your phone before the silence even has a chance to settle. You finish one task and immediately make another. You walk to the kitchen not because you're hungry, but because your mind suddenly has no instructions to follow and panics. We fill, and we fill. Not because we're broken, but because we've been taught that stillness means something is wrong. Productivity is our religion. Motion is our proof of life. And when the noise stops, existential anxiety floods in like water through a crack. But here's the paradox on which this entire book rests, the one that, once you truly feel it, changes everything. The thing you're running from is the only one that can give you rest. Nothingness is not an abyss. It is a room with no furniture, and because there's no furniture, you can finally breathe. There are no roles to perform here, no identities to maintain, no deadlines chasing you from wall to wall. It is the pause between the notes, without which there is no music, the blank page, without which there are no words, the exhale without which your lungs would burst. But you have to stop running long enough to find the door. So let's try something together, right now. Wherever you are, in a car, on a walk, or lying in bed, I want you to take 3 slow breaths, long exhales. Don't force anything. Don't visualize a beach, count to 10, or try to clear your mind. Just breathe. As you breathe, notice what's there. Maybe it's noise. Maybe it's restlessness. Maybe it's a to-do list that won't stop scrolling across the inside of your eyelids. That's fine. Everything is fine. The practice isn't emptiness. The practice is noticing. Watch your thoughts, the way you'd watch clouds drift across the sky, not trying to grab them, not trying to make them disappear, just watching. There they go, and there comes another, and there it goes. This is where the journey begins, not with a dramatic breakthrough, not with a revelation that cracks the sky open, but with 3 slow breaths and the willingness to stay in the room a little longer than you usually do. That's enough. For now, it's more than enough. Why we fear the quiet. Let me tell you something your brain doesn't want you to know. It's afraid you'll do nothing. Because nothing is dangerous, but nothing is uncontrollable. And your brain, this magnificent, exhausting machine, has spent years convincing itself that control is the same as safety. Think about the last time you were genuinely still, not asleep, not watching anything, not half listening to a podcast while folding laundry, but truly still, with no input and no output. What happened? For most people, within 30 seconds, the mind begins to produce. It generates anxiety about the future, replays the past, and makes judgments about whether you're doing this right. A sudden, urgent memory that you forgot to reply to an email from 6 days ago. The mind hates a vacuum. It will fill every available space with something, anything, rather than sit in the quiet. And here's where it gets interesting. The fear that rises when things go still, that low-grade dread, that itch to move, isn't really about the silence. It's about what the silence might reveal. When the noise stops, something else becomes audible. Your actual life. Not the story you've been telling yourself about your life, not the version you post about, perform at dinner parties, or use to reassure yourself at midnight. Your actual life. How much of it is genuinely yours? How many of your choices are driven by love, and how many by fear? Whether the roles you wear have become cages, whether the achievements you've been climbing toward are what you actually want, or just the next rung that seemed like the one you were supposed to grab. Stillness shows you things, and that can feel terrifying. But here's what I want you to hold on to. The fear you feel around emptiness is not a warning. It's a conditioned response. It was taught to you, slowly and thoroughly, by a culture that profits from your restlessness. Every notification, every endless feed, every platform engineered to pull you back in, these are machines built to keep you moving. Not because movement serves you, but because your attention is valuable to someone. Somewhere along the way, busyness became a virtue. Rest became a source of guilt. Silence became something you had to earn. And the natural human capacity for stillness, which has existed since before language, since before clocks, since before the entire exhausting apparatus of modern productivity, was buried under decades of noise. You don't have to dig forever to find it. It's right there, just beneath the surface. The fear needs to be recognized for what it is: not a truth, but a habit. Not reality, but a reflex. Like all reflexes, it can be retrained. 3 fears often live in the silence, and it's worth naming them. The first is the fear of death. Not necessarily literal death, though that too, but the death of relevance, the death of purpose, the death of a self that exists only through its usefulness. When you stop doing, what are you? The silence is close enough to that question that the mind panics. The second is the fear of identity. Most of us have spent so long being the achiever, the caregiver, the reliable one, the one who has it together, that we don't know who we are without the costume. The stillness strips the costume away, and the self underneath, untitled and unperforming, can feel terrifyingly naked. The third is the fear of uncertainty. Control is the mind's preferred response to a world that refuses to be predictable. But in the silence, you can't control anything. Things happen, time passes. The moment is what it is, and the mind, trained to manage, finds that unbearable. You don't need to conquer these fears. You only need to see them clearly. When you do, they begin to loosen. They are not walls, they are shadows, and shadows dissolve when you turn toward them. The paradox of emptiness. Here is the strangest thing about nothingness. It is full, not full of distraction, noise, or busyness, but full in the way the ocean is full, filled in the way a room with clean air, good light, and no furniture feels more spacious, not less. The emptiness of nothingness is not deprivation, it is capacity. Everything that exists requires space to exist in. Music requires silence between the notes. Words require the blank page. Your own breath requires the exhale, the letting go before the inhale can come. Without the nothing, there is no room for the something. This is not a metaphor. It is the literal structure of how life works. And yet we spend most of our lives trying to eliminate the empty spaces, frantically stuffing every pause with content, every silence with sound, and every gap in the schedule with another commitment. Because we've been trained to believe that fullness is the goal and emptiness is the failure. But watch what happens when the fullness never stops, when there is no pause, no exhale, no empty room to step into. You are crowded out of your own life. There is so much coming in that nothing can settle, nothing can land, nothing has time to become meaningful before the next thing arrives. The philosopher's word for this is impermanence. And what's usually treated as a melancholy observation about life's nature is, if you look at it differently, one of the most liberating truths available to a human being. Everything passes. Every achievement, every fear, every person, and every version of yourself. That sounds like a loss, and sometimes it is. But it is also freedom, because if everything passes, nothing can trap you forever. The job that ends makes room for the job that fits. The relationship that changes makes room for the one that's true. The version of yourself that dissolves the one held together by titles, achievements, and other people's approval makes room for the version beneath, the quieter one, the one that doesn't need anything to prove its right to exist. There is a practice I want to offer you, and it is deceptively simple. Once a day, choose one thing in your life, just one, and acknowledge, without drama, that it will pass. It might be your morning coffee, still hot. It might be a conversation you're in the middle of. It might be the love you have for someone, or the fear you're carrying about something unresolved. Just look at it and say quietly, this will change. Don't mourn it, don't grasp at it, just let its truth settle. Notice what happens. In that acknowledgement, something softens. The desperate need to keep things exactly as they are loosens. And in that loosening, just a millimeter of slack in the rope, freedom begins to breathe. Impermanence is not the enemy of meaning. It is its source. A sunset is beautiful precisely because it will be gone in minutes. A laugh is precious because it can't be replayed. The things that move us most are the things we cannot hold, because when we don't hold them, we have to be fully present. Not planning or reviewing the past, but actually alive in the moment that is happening. This is what nothingness teaches. Not how to check out of life, but how to check in completely, finally, without one foot always in the next thing. The weight we carry. The masks. Let me paint you a picture. It's 7:30 inches the morning. You wake up, and before your eyes are fully open, you're already someone. The parent who has to get the kids ready, the professional who has emails to answer, the partner who should have remembered something, the person who is behind and needs to catch up. By the time you reach the bathroom mirror, you are already wearing 6 masks, and you haven't even brushed your teeth. We call these masks roles, labels, identities, and we put them on so automatically, so completely, that we forget they are masks at all. We start to believe they are our face. The achiever, the caregiver, the dependable one, the strong one, the one who never shows weakness, the one who always knows what to do, the one who has it together, the survivor, the failure, the outsider, the one who is always fine. These labels are not lies. They contain real parts of us. But over time, they harden and fuse. And when life inevitably shifts, when success falters, when a relationship ends, When a role you've played for years suddenly disappears, you don't feel like a role is ending. You feel like you are ending. That's how deeply we've merged with our masks. Think about the last time someone criticized you at work. Truly criticized you, not cruelly, just directly. What happened in your body? For most people, a physical reaction precedes any thought. A tightening, a heat, a shame that runs deeper than the critique justifies. Because it didn't feel like your work was being questioned, it felt like you were. Or think about the last time a plan fell apart. Something you'd built, worked toward, and imagined in detail suddenly didn't materialize. The grief that followed, was it proportional to the loss? Or did it feel like something deeper was collapsing? When your identity is built on outcomes, every failed outcome is a small death. The mask doesn't protect you. It leaves you vulnerable. Here's a practice that can begin to change this, and it's one you can start tonight. Before you sleep, take 5 quiet minutes. Think back through the day, not to judge it, but to notice what you were wearing. Which roles did you inhabit? Which ones felt okay, like a light coat you chose to wear, and which ones felt like armor you couldn't take off? Write them down if you can. Just a few words per entry. Then, for each role that weighed on you, ask 2 questions. What did it give me today? What did it cost me? You don't need to answer dramatically. Just look. Just let yourself see the trade. Because the moment you can see it, the moment the mask becomes visible as a mask, it loses a little of its grip. In that tiny opening, you begin to sense that you are larger than any label that's been applied to you, that you were here before the role and will still be here when it's gone. The art of loosening a mask isn't about throwing it away. It's about learning to put it on and take it off consciously, by choice, rather than living as if it were permanently soldered to your face. Here's one of my favorite exercises for this topic. In the morning, before you step into your day's first role, pause and imagine your roles as jackets hanging in a closet. They're useful and have their place, but you choose to put them on lightly, knowing you can take them off. You are not the jacket. Then, during the day, when you feel a role tightening, when the mask starts to feel like a vice, close your eyes for 3 seconds and visualize loosening it slightly, without removing it, and just giving yourself a fraction more room to breathe inside it. And at night, take it off. Consciously and deliberately, with the gentleness you'd show to something you'd worn all day, place it on the shelf beside you. Whisper, even just to yourself, even just in your mind, I am not this label. For now, I rest without it. With time and repetition, something remarkable happens. The fear of losing the role softens. You've practiced living without it, and you know from lived experience, not theory, that you don't disappear when the mask comes off. You're still there. Quieter, maybe, but more real. The weight of expectation. Alongside the masks we wear, there are the rules we carry with us, mostly unspoken. The laws we absorb so early and so thoroughly that we don't even remember learning them. People should notice my effort. Plans should work out. I must not appear uncertain. Others should recognize what I sacrifice. Life should be fair. You didn't write these rules, but you enforce them relentlessly, on yourself and on the world around you. And when reality violates them, as it perpetually does, the pain that follows isn't just disappointment. It's the sting of a rule being broken. It has a different quality, sharper, more personal, more tinged with injustice. After all I did, how could this happen? Here's a gentle exercise. For 1 week, carry a small notebook or use your phone, and whenever you feel frustrated, hurt, anxious, or confused, jot down 1 sentence. What expectation did I have that was just broken? It doesn't need to be elaborate, just the expectation, written down. I expected people to appreciate my work. I expected this conversation to go differently. I expected not to make this mistake. I expected to feel more by now. Look at those expectations. Not to shame yourself for having them, they're deeply human. But for each one, ask, Is this expectation realistic? Is it flexible? Or is it a rule so rigid that any deviation feels like a betrayal? You'll find that much of your pain doesn't come from what happens. It comes from the gap between what happens and what you were silently certain should happen. And the suffering lives in that gap, not in the events themselves. When you soften an expectation, not abandon it, but loosen it, the gap shrinks. The world becomes slightly less like a constant violator of your internal code and slightly more like what it actually is: unpredictable, alive, and indifferent to the script you wrote. This isn't a resignation. It isn't giving up caring. It's graduating from suffering over the unchangeable to being free to respond to the actual, finding the still point, the noise within and without. We live in the loudest era of human history, not just in decibels, though that too, but in terms of input. The sheer volume of information, opinion, stimulation, and demand flowing toward you every waking hour has no historical precedent. Your great-grandparents never experienced the particular exhaustion of knowing, in real time, what's happening everywhere in the world, while managing social expectations, professional pressure, family dynamics, and an unread inbox. The external noise is relentless, but the internal noise, your own mind's running commentary, can be even louder. Notice what's happening right now, inside you, even as you listen to this. There's a part of your mind that isn't listening. It's somewhere else, planning dinner, replaying a conversation, composing a message, or wondering whether this is the kind of thing that will actually help, or whether it's just another hour you've added to your listening history without anything really changing. That voice never fully stops. We have been taught to believe it is us, that the voice is us, which means that if we want any peace, we need to silence something fundamental to our nature. But the voice is not you. It is a function, a process, a very busy, very concerned roommate who lives in your head and has opinions about everything. The fact that you can observe the voice, notice it, describe it, sometimes even laugh at it, means you and the voice are not the same thing. The one doing the observing is different, quieter, something that was there before the voice got so loud. Let me teach you one of the most important practices in this book, and it is simply this. Sit somewhere comfortable. Set a timer, 3 minutes, or 5 if you're ambitious. Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and watch. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Don't try to empty your mind. That's not only impossible, but also beside the point. Instead, watch your thoughts as you'd watch birds on a wire. There's one, and there goes another, and now a whole flock of them, and then a pause, and then one more. When you get pulled into a thought, and you will, probably 20 times in 3 minutes, notice that you've been pulled in, and without self-criticism, return to the breath. Return to watching. That's the entire practice, and it is more transformative than it sounds. Because what you're building over days, weeks, and months of this is not emptiness. You're building distance. The small but revolutionary gap between you and your thoughts. The pause before the reaction. The breath before the response. The moment, sometimes only half a second, when, instead of being inside the thought, you can see it from outside, assess it, and choose what to do with it. That pause is when your life begins to change. It's where the thing you are about to say gets reconsidered, where the spiral gets interrupted, and where the anxiety gets named instead of believed. Where the old habit gets a fraction of light shone on it, just enough to see that you don't have to follow it today. The still point isn't somewhere else. It isn't a retreat in the mountains, an app subscription, or a particular kind of cushion. It is the pause you already have access to right now, in the gap between stimulus and response. You have to practice finding it, creating sacred pockets of silence. I want to discuss your schedule for a moment. Not to add anything to it, I promise. To remove something. Most people's days are scheduled to the edge of capacity, and then a little beyond. The drive time is for podcasts. The workout is new. The lunch is for emails. The commute is for audio. The wind down is streaming. Even sleep is noise, a fan, a show, something to drown out the silence so it doesn't have a chance to say anything. This is not a character flaw. It's a survival strategy. The silence, when you first re-encounter it, is genuinely uncomfortable. The mind, starved of its usual input, begins to generate anxiety the way a neglected wound produces heat. It complains, it itches. It insists that something must be done immediately and reaches for the nearest distraction before you even consciously choose it. So we give it what it wants, and the silence never gets a chance. But here is what silence does when you give it even 5 minutes a day consistently, not heroically, just quietly and daily. It teaches your nervous system that quiet is not danger. It lets the background noise of your own mind become audible so it can be addressed rather than forever drowned out. And it gradually creates a kind of internal spaciousness, a breathing room inside yourself that eventually becomes something you can enter even in the middle of chaos. You don't need long silences, you need frequent ones. 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening, pause for 60 seconds. That's all, 60 seconds. No phone, no task. Just feel your breath, feel your feet. Let the minute pass without filling it. You can anchor these pauses to things you already do. Put the phone down for 1 minute before your morning coffee. Before a meeting begins, sit in silence for 60 seconds instead of scrolling before you pick up the next thing at night. Pause. None of this is dramatic. None of it requires willpower, transformation, or a strict schedule. It only requires the small, daily decision not to fill every gap. And then, once a week or more, if you can give yourself 15 or 20 minutes of something longer, not necessarily formal meditation, it could be sitting quietly with a cup of tea and no agenda. A walk without headphones, letting the world's ordinary sounds be enough, or a few minutes in your car after you park, just breathing before the next thing begins. Think of these as sacred pockets. Small moments you protect not because the world will stop without them, but because you need them. Your nervous system needs them. The quiet, real version of you buried under the rolls, the noise, and the relentless forward momentum needs a place to come back to. The beautiful thing is that these pockets compound. 1 minute of quiet, 3 times a day, over a month, begins to change how your mind relates to silence. It stops being a threat and becomes a place you recognize, a place you can return to, a little clearing in the middle of everything small, consistent, and yours. The freedom of less. The trap of more. There is a treadmill in your life. You may not have chosen to get on it, but you're on it. And it runs in one direction toward more success, more recognition, more possessions, more certainty, more experience. More proof that you're moving in the right direction, making progress, not wasting time, not falling behind. The terrible thing about this treadmill is that it never reaches a destination. Every milestone is immediately replaced by the next. A new departure follows every arrival. The promotion that was supposed to bring relief brings new pressure. The purchase that was supposed to complete something leaves you scanning for the next thing. The achievement that was supposed to prove something raises the bar for the proof required. This is not a failure of will. It is not laziness, ingratitude, or a flawed character. It is the design of the machine you've been placed in. The economy runs on your dissatisfaction. Advertising is the art of making you feel incomplete, so you'll buy what promises to complete you. And it works not because you're gullible, but because the feeling of incompleteness it exploits is real. The restlessness is genuine. It just has a different cause than the ones being sold to you. The issue isn't that you need more, it's that you've lost touch with enough. Enough is one of the most radical words in the English language right now. To say, I have enough, I am enough. This moment is enough to step off the treadmill entirely, at least for a moment. At first, it feels like heresy. What do you mean by enough? There's still so much to do, so much to become, so much that could go wrong if you stop pressing forward. Yes, also, Enough. I recommend a 7-day experiment. Not a revolution, just a test. Something you can try and observe without committing. For 7 days, pay attention to one thing. Whenever you reach for more, ask yourself why. Not to judge the reaching, not to stop it necessarily, to notice it, to bring a little light into the automatic. When you reach for your phone in a quiet moment, what are you seeking? When you add another commitment to your week, what need is it meeting? When you find yourself planning the next thing before this one is finished, what are you running from? The answers may surprise you. They often have nothing to do with the external object of the reach and everything to do with what you're trying not to feel. Uncertainty, irrelevance, the discomfort of being present in a moment that isn't optimized for anything. On one day of your experiment, try only what you already have. Eat what's in the kitchen. Wear what's already in the closet. Fill the hours with what's already in your life, existing relationships, existing pleasures, and the capacity to be at home without importing anything new. Notice what that feels like. Most people initially feel a kind of restlessness, then something else, a quieter thing, an almost forgotten sensation of sufficiency. The discovery that what's already here, when you actually attend to it, is more than you realized. Not everything you want, but enough. Maybe, on the right day, more than enough. Choosing what matters. Here is a question worth sitting with for a few minutes. When did you last feel most alive? Not the most productive, not the most impressive, not the most in control. Most alive, most present, most genuinely you. Most like the person you would be if no one were watching and nothing needed to be performed. Think back. Let the memory surface. For most people, the answer doesn't lie in the things they spend most of their time on. It's rarely a meeting, an inbox, or an optimization. It's more often something small. A conversation that went somewhere unexpected. A morning that started slowly and stayed that way. A moment in nature. A creative act done for no one, a connection that happened without an agenda. These are the real things, and we bury them. We treat them as rewards to be earned only after the important things are finished, as if they are frivolous additions to the real business of life, rather than the real business of life itself. Here is an exercise that can shift this. Take 15 quiet minutes to recall 3 specific memories. One time when you felt genuinely at peace. One when you felt genuine joy, not the performance of joy, but the real thing. And one when you felt proud in a way that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Write down each one. What were you doing? Who, if anyone, was present? What did it feel like in your body? Then look for the pattern. What do these 3 moments have in common? What do they not share with how you spend most of your hours? Based on what you find, name your actual values, not the values you're supposed to have, but the ones these memories point to. Maybe it's connection, creativity, simplicity, being in the natural world, learning, solitude, or depth of experience over breadth of achievement. Write those words down. Keep them where they are visible. Here is what happens when you know what actually matters to you. Every other decision becomes clearer. Every yes and no, every commitment accepted or declined, every morning and evening hour, you have a compass. Not a rigid rule, but a compass. A way of asking, does this take me closer to what actually nourishes me, or further from it? Choosing what matters isn't about deprivation, it's about curation. It's about taking the vast, undifferentiated pile of things your life currently holds and asking, honestly, which of them deserve to stay. Some things will surprise you. Some things you thought you needed, you'll find you don't. And some things you've treated as afterthoughts, the slow morning, the long walk, the conversation without a purpose, you'll discover are, in fact, the whole point. The art of letting go. Why control makes us miserable. Let me describe something you know well. It's the feeling of gripping. That subtle but pervasive tension in the body and mind that comes from trying to keep everything in its proper place. It lives in the shoulders, usually, in the jaw, in the way you breathe too shallowly, because a deeper breath might mean you've relaxed your vigilance for a moment. You grip other people's behavior, hoping, needing, and quietly demanding that they act the way you've decided will make things okay. You grip outcomes, rehearsing how things must go and replaying what's already happened as if repetition could change the result. You grip the future, building elaborate mental scaffolding to keep the unpredictable out. This gripping feels like responsibility. It sometimes feels like love, like competence, like the mature thing to do. But here's the truth the body already knows, even if the mind resists it. Gripping is exhausting, and it doesn't work. You cannot control another person's choices. You cannot guarantee outcomes, no matter how thoroughly you plan. You cannot prevent the unpredictable. You can only exhaust yourself in the attempt. Every unit of energy spent gripping what cannot be held is a unit stolen from what truly needs you. The desire to control stems from fear. The mind, not trusting that life will be survivable without its management, takes on the impossible task of managing everything. And then, when things inevitably shift, as they inevitably do, you feel not just disappointment, but betrayal. How did this happen when I was working so hard to prevent it? Here is a practice, simple, daily, and genuinely transformative. Every morning, take 5 minutes to write down your concerns. Not all of them, just the ones that are pressing on you today. Then, for each one, mark it with one of 3 designations. Act: I can do something specific and useful today. Do not plan for every scenario. Do not worry about everything, but take one concrete action. Allow: this needs to move on its own. My interference will not help. I can stay aware, but I will not push. Release: this is entirely beyond my reach. I am carrying it for no useful reason. It is noise, not a signal. For the act items, take the action, just that one, just today. For the allow items, place a hand on the list and, if you can, say aloud, I allow this to move in its own time. For the release items, tear the paper, burn it if you can, or cross it out with finality. Let the physical act symbolize your willingness to put it down. This practice isn't magic. The released items will come back. The allowed items will still make your mind fidget. But each time you practice the distinction, each time you train yourself to notice what you actually have power over versus what you're exhausting yourself trying to control, the grip loosens. And in that loosening lies something remarkable: energy. The energy once spent on the impossible suddenly becomes available for the actual. The focus once scattered across every variable reassembles around the few variables that genuinely respond to your care. Surrender is not a weakness, it is precision. Active surrender: act, allow, release. The word surrender has a bad reputation. It sounds like giving up, like defeat, like lying down in the middle of life, letting things happen to you as you look at the ceiling. But real surrender, the kind that actually works, is nothing like that. It is the ability to clearly and calmly distinguish between what is yours to hold and what is not, to act fully where your actions carry weight, to allow patience where the situation needs space, and to release completely what no amount of effort can change. This is not passivity, it is precision. It is the opposite of wasting yourself in battles you cannot win. Think of water. Water is the softest thing in the world, and it is also unstoppable. It doesn't fight its way through rock, it finds the path of least resistance and moves through it, wearing away stone over time without strain. It doesn't grip the banks of the river it flows. It surrenders to gravity not because it is weak, but because surrendering to gravity is what allows it to reach the sea. You can live this way. Not all the time, not at first, but enough. With practice, more and more so. When you feel the grip tightening, when your shoulders rise, your breath shallows, and your mind begins the familiar catalog of every way this could go wrong. Pause, 3 slow breaths. Then ask, what, in this moment, is actually mine to hold? Often, the answer is smaller than the fear suggests. One conversation to have, one action to take, one truth to say clearly. Everything else, the other person's reaction, the outcome, the timing, the way the world receives what you offer, none of that is yours. Give what's yours. Release what isn't. Breathe on the exhale. Feel the weight lift slightly, not because the situation changed, but because you've stopped carrying what was never yours. This is the art of flow, not drifting, not checking out, moving through life with a kind of fluid intelligence, acting where action matters, stepping back when stepping back serves better, and resting in the steady understanding that not everything requires your grip to keep it from flying apart. The quiet self. Who are you without the noise? There is a version of you that exists before the roles are assigned, before the job title, the relationship status, the to-do list, and the carefully curated opinions on everything that might be asked of you at a dinner party, before the reputation you maintain and the one you fear you have, before the identity you've built from your struggles, your successes, your preferences, and your peculiarities. Beneath all of that, there is something that observes, something that watches the roles the way you might watch a play from a seat in the audience, something that observes the thoughts. There goes another anxious one. There goes another ambitious one without becoming them. Something quiet, steady, and present, having been there, constant, through every version of you you've ever been. This is what some traditions call the witness, what others call the observing self, what this book calls the quiet self. And it is not something you need to create, achieve, or deserve. It is already there. It has always been there. It is obscured by the noise, by the roles, by the relentless forward motion of a life lived almost entirely on the surface. The practice of meeting this quieter self is not complicated. Find 15 minutes truly uninterrupted, truly quiet. Sit somewhere comfortable. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. As thoughts arrive, and they will, continuously watch them, not as a detached, superior observer, but simply as a witness. Don't suppress or analyze them. There's a thought about the email I didn't send. There's a thought about whether I'm doing this right. There's a thought about dinner. Label them gently. Thinking, planning, worrying, remembering. Each time you label one, notice the one doing the labeling. That's not a thought, it's awareness. It's the clear, quiet space in which thoughts arise. It doesn't argue with them or try to stop them. It simply sees them, names them, and lets them pass. Rest there in that awareness, as often as you can return to it. Each time a thought carries you away, which happens often and is completely normal, the moment you notice you've been carried away is the practice. You've returned to the witness. You're back. Do this every day, even briefly, even imperfectly. Over time, something shifts that is hard to describe until you feel it. The thoughts lose a little of their absolute authority. The emotions still come, still surge, still sometimes overwhelm, but there's a faint quality of witnessing even in the overwhelm, a small part that can observe the wave even while being moved by it. That small part is your foundation. Not a thought because it watches thoughts, not a role because it watches roles, not an emotion because it watches emotions. Something more primary, something that was there in your first memory and will be there at your last breath. Something that is, quite simply, you before everything else was added. Meeting this self doesn't require perfection, an extended retreat, or any particular spiritual belief. It just requires the daily willingness to sit, watch, and return. And gradually, that self becomes less like a stranger and more like home, living it, weaving it into every day. Everything we've touched on in this journey, the stillness, the witness, the loosening of masks and expectations, the distinction among act, allow, and release, the freedom of less, the beauty of passing moments. None of it matters unless it reaches your Tuesday. Not your best Tuesday. Not the Tuesday with unscheduled time, a quiet house, and you already in a reflective mood, your ordinary Tuesday. The one where the morning starts late, the emails pile up, the child needs something, the deadline shifts, the conversation goes sideways, and by afternoon, you can barely remember what you had for breakfast. That Tuesday, that's where this has to live. In the ordinary, the imperfect, and the mess. And the secret to keeping it alive there is not discipline, not willpower, and not the fragile calm of someone who has managed to avoid difficulty. It is the small, consistent practice of returning, again and again, without judgment, to the practices that anchor you. In the morning, before the day begins, its velocity is 5 minutes your breath. Here I am, beneath it all, only that. 3 times a day in the transitions. The moments between things, take a single, slow breath. Feel your feet, feel the air. Return for just one breath to the still point beneath everything. Before sleep, in the evening, 5 minutes of reflection. What did I carry that wasn't mine today? What can I put down now? Write it, breathe it, release it into the dark. These 3 anchors, morning, midday, evening, are enough. Not dramatic, not time-consuming, but consistent. Consistency is everything. What you're really doing over months and years is building a new reflex. You're teaching your nervous system a different default response. Instead of uncomfortable fill, grab, control, react, you're practicing. Uncomfortable breathe, notice, choose. That shift, small as it may sound, reorganizes a life. The person who lives through that shift is not someone who never feels fear, grief, frustration, or the pull of old patterns. They're someone who has a pause before reacting, a breath before choosing, a way home, back to themselves, even in the middle of everything. And that not the complete absence of difficulty, nor the achievement of permanent serenity, is what this book means by freedom. The ongoing journey. I want to be honest with you about this. None of what we've talked about is a destination. There is no finish line where you've successfully integrated stillness into your life and can stop practicing. No final chapter where the masks are permanently retired, the grip is permanently loosened, and the quiet self sits undisturbed on its seat of permanent peace. Life will keep coming. The noise will return. The old habits will reassert themselves, sometimes loudly, sometimes in disguise, sometimes so gradually that you don't notice until you're back in the middle of a pattern you thought you'd left behind. This is not failure. This is what it looks like to be a human being who practices something. Every tradition that has ever thought seriously about this, every contemplative lineage, every wisdom teacher, every serious practitioner, says the same thing in different words. The path is not about arriving. It is about returning, again and again, without drama, without shame, with the steady willingness of someone who knows the way home because they've walked it 10,000 times. When the silence leaves your days, bring it back quietly without making a project of it. When the masks tighten, notice it, breathe, and loosen. When the grip returns, and it will do the practice. Act, allow, release. Whatever is yours, give it fully. Whatever isn't, set it down. The practices are not the point. They point to something. A quality of presence, of spaciousness, of being genuinely here that lives beneath everything you do, whether you are sitting in formal meditation or scrambling through a Tuesday that won't cooperate. That quality is what the book calls nothingness. Not emptiness, not absence, but a particular kind of fullness, the fullness of a room where you can breathe, where nothing is extraneous, and where life can move freely because you're not gripping it into stillness. You've probably touched it more times than you realize. In moments of pure presence, a perfect hour with someone you love, a piece of music that stopped your thoughts, a moment in nature when the usual interior monologue went quiet. Those moments weren't accidents. They were glimpses, brief encounters with the thing this book has been pointing toward. The practice is to find the door to those moments, not to live there exclusively, not to abandon the world in all its beautiful complications, but to know where it is, to be able to knock and to return. Professor Nothingness, it turns out, does not live in a philosophy department, on a meditation cushion, or at the top of a mountain accessible only to the advanced. Professor Nothingness lives in the pause before you speak, in the breath you take before the next thing begins, in the 3 seconds of real quiet you give yourself before the morning runs away. During those pauses, something is waiting. It has always been there. It has been waiting quietly while you were busy. And now that you're listening even a little, even imperfectly, you will begin to hear it. Not with your ears, but with that part of you that has always been still. The part that knows, without needing proof, that there is something beneath all the noise worth resting in. The return. We're nearly at the end of this hour and a half together, which means, as with everything, it too will pass. But before it does, I want to leave you with something to carry with you. Not a list, not a set of steps to memorize, just one image. Imagine that inside you. Beneath all the thinking, striving, performing, worrying, and planning, beneath it all there is a room. It has always been there. It is quiet in there. Not silent in a dead way, but quiet as a forest is quiet, full of presence. Alive, breathing, unmistakably real. You have been in this room before. Those moments when everything went still, when time seemed to soften, when you were just here, just alive, without an agenda. That room is not a reward. It is not something you earn through enough meditation, simplicity, or letting go. It is simply where you already live, at your deepest level, behind the roles, the noise, and the running. The practice, all of it, every breath, every pause, and every act of release, is simply finding your way back, learning the route, and recognizing the door. And the door is just one slow breath away, whenever you're ready. Here, now, exactly as you are. Take it.